This may come as a shock to some of you, but Electric-type Hardcore Nuzlockes can be particularly challenging. Electric types generally tend to be pretty uncommon, which is made worse by the fact that I chose to do this in Pokémon Black 2 instead of White 2, meaning I won't have access to the Electabuzz line, but I promise there's a good reason for that. Over in Flocacy Ranch, I can sneak onto the farm and steal one of their sheep. I name her Circuit and chuck my Oshawott into the desert-themed box in the PC. A minus special attack nature on my only Pokemon seems like a recipe for disaster. Circuit does have one thing going for her though, and that's having access to the move Thunder Wave. This mitigates her speed deficiency and allows her to occasionally avoid being hit due to Patrat being fully paralyzed. The goal here is to try to get his Pokemon to -1 attack with Growl, as Cheren will usually opt for a workout to get to at least +1. Once I do, Circuit starts hitting Thunder Shocks, and Patrat is generous enough to be fully paralyzed multiple turns in a row to allow us to take a clean KO. Lillipup outspeeds and gets paralyzed by static, so the ensuing Thunder Wave wastes a turn. With Lillipup at -1 attack, it's time to start Thunder Shocking and hoping for the best. Sadly, with the minus special attack nature, it brings him into potion range, and Circuit gets hit into the red. It's looking like this is the end of attempt 1.
Just get in the car.
Unless Circuit nails a clutch critical hit. With our first badge in hand and an increased level cap, Circuit evolves into a Flaffy before we even get to Burgh City. Once we're here, we eavesdrop on a public family argument because who doesn't love a little drama? In Burgh Complex, I can add arguably the most important encounter of the run, a Magnemite that I named Voltage. This is the reason that I chose this version, as in White 2, Elekid is a possible encounter here, but I couldn't risk not having Voltage, especially for the upcoming battle with Roxie and her poison types. Thanks to their steel typing, they completely wall Roxie's Pokemon. A few Thunder Shocks later, and we have our second badge. After experiencing the downsides of getting involved in other people's drama by being dragged to Pokestar Studios, I find Team Plasma causing all sorts of trouble. I quickly take care of the problem, and the ship captain offers to sail me over to Castelia City now that he's given up on his dreams of being a movie star. What could go wrong getting on a boat with someone whose lifelong dream just got crushed, taking away his only reason to live? Nothing, obviously. We arrive in Castelia safe and sound. I try to get into the gym, but the gym leader isn't here. That's when Iris shows up and offers to help me look for Team Plasma, even though according to her, they disbanded years ago. She doesn't even bother questioning it, she just blindly offers to help. She's a true ride or die. We all need friends like Iris. Someone willing to feed into our delusional fantasies, regardless of how silly they might be. You want me to what? Go down into the sewer? Yeah, never mind. Friendship over. Well, better make the most out of the situation. Look, some tasty leftovers laying on the sewer floor. With Team Plasma taken care of and Burgh finally back at the gym, it's time to earn our third badge. 2 of his 3 Pokemon are part grass type, meaning they resist our electric type attacks, so this one might be tough. Thankfully, Paralysis breaks the AI's brain. Because Swadloon is paralyzed, it will spam String Shot in order to try and close the perceived speed gap. Once low enough, I send in Voltage to take it out with a Sonic Boom. This means when Dwebble comes in, they can hit a Mirror Shot, causing Burgh to use his potion. I have Circuit finish off Dwebble so I can paralyze Leavanny when he comes in. This causes the same String Shot spam, meaning Voltage can avoid being hit by powerful Razor Leaves. Even with Voltage missing 2 Mirror Shots in a row, they're never in any danger. After defeating Burgh, I return to the sewers to find a stairway that leads to a patch of grass where I can catch Dynamo the Eevee. We avoid every wild Pokemon in the desert area to arrive in Nimbasa City, where a hidden Thunder Zone evolves Dynamo into a Jolteon. On Route 16, after patiently waiting for Shaking Grass, I find and catch an Emolga that I name Relay. Emolga may not be the strongest Pokemon, but its part flying type gives us a much needed ground type immunity. I wanted to go for a ride on the Ferris wheel to let the whole team have some fun before taking on the next gym, but this absolutely insane girl challenges me to a battle and takes me on the worst date I've ever been on. I can't let my disastrous dating life get in the way of my goals, so I prepare for the upcoming gym battle against Elesa. Circuit and Voltage both evolve right at the level cap, giving the team a nice upgrade right before taking on my biggest rival in the region, a fellow electric type specialist. Thanks to Dynamo's Volt Absorb ability, her Emolga can't Volt Switch out, so it's safe to set up 3 workups while she hits a few weak Pursuits and Quick Attacks. Once set up, he's able to cleanly sweep through her team using Thunderfang and Dig. We may both be electric type trainers, but clearly she has a lot to learn. Our victory earns us an excellent TM for our team, Volt Switch. In the northwest corner of the city, I find Hugh trying to 1v4 Team Plasma Grunts. After picking a fight with them for simply standing around and realizing he's outnumbered, he decides to make this my problem too. Fine, I'll help, but next time try not to be so aggressive, okay? he has some real anger issues. Driftvale is the home of what looks to be by far the biggest challenge of the run so far. Clay, the ground-type gym leader. This kind old man in one of the hotels gives us an air balloon which could come in handy. Unlike in Black and White 1, Chargestone Cave is open. This allows me to catch Inductor the Joltik. I can also farm Dust Clouds for a ton of different gems which will be really useful in battles going forward. And most importantly, I can evolve Voltage into a Magnezone. We're going to need all of the help we can get in order to deal with Clay. It took quite a bit of planning, but I think I've come up with a good strategy here. Voltage is able to take down Krokorok thanks to the move tutor that teaches Signal Beam. Sandslash comes in next, but a Steel Gem boosted Mirror Shot is strong enough to get the KO. That just leaves his biggest threat, Excadrill. Anticipating a Bulldoze, I send in Circuit, who's holding the air balloon, but his angry mole goes for a Metal Claw instead and pops the balloon. That is a total disaster. My guess is the AI didn't register Bulldoze as a one-hit KO thanks to Sturdy, and didn't see the need for a speed drop, so it went for a random move. I'm gonna need to brush up on my Gen 5 AI knowledge, I guess. Circuit could survive a Bulldoze, but her Excadrill goes for Slash instead. Thanks to the same move tutor, Circuit is able to learn Fire Punch. Even though Clay has refused to use Bulldoze up until this point, I have to assume he's going to see the KO and swap to Relay. Dynamo avoids a Rock Slide on the pivot, then outspeeds. Thankfully, Bulldoze doesn't hit underground targets because otherwise I don't know what I would have done here. A ground gem boost ensures Dig does enough for the KO and we make it through the toughest battle yet without losing anyone. Now that I can access the PWT, I can use the move reminder, as well as farm various colored shards by simply withdrawing from the competition and receiving them as consolation prizes. I get the HM for Surf from Cheren and make it through Chargestone Cave where I meet Professor Juniper in person for the first time. Thanks for the gift. Are you sure I can have this? I didn't get you anything. Sorry. This is awkward. Thankfully, Skyla shows up to break the tension. Before challenging the gym, I head north and catch Capacitor the Zebstrika. Then evolve our little Inductor into a Galvantula, making him go from a cute little bug to a walking nightmare. Speaking of nightmares, I'm sure Skyla is going to be seeing us and hers for quite some time. After the trauma of facing the ground-type gym, the flying-type gym feels like a vacation. Dynamo cleanly sweeps through her entire team with discharges without taking a single hit, thanks in part to her Skarmory missing what would have been a very weak Steel Wing. Skyla offers up a ride in her plane to get over to Lentimos Town, and man, I really need to consider becoming a gym leader if it pays owning a private plane type money. As Bianca and I make our way through Reversal Mountain, we're forced into a double battle that I normally wouldn't feel the need to cover. But for this particular matchup, I actually had to use a few brain cells because Hiker Jared has an Excadrill. Circuit does a good job of making it a 2v1, and Relay comes in on what I was assuming would be a ground type move, but instead he almost gets sent to his death from a Rock Slide. You good, little buddy? Sorry about that. We managed to get out of here without any casualties and make it through to Undella Town, where Hugh is waiting to try and ambush us. Dynamo doesn't seem to appreciate his tactics, as he manages to take out his whole team without taking a single hit, thanks in part to some confusion luck against his superior. He somehow manages to beat us to Lacunosa Town, and once again gets me involved in a fight that I wanted no part of. I suppose after how easily he just got his ass handed to him in our last fight, he knows he's going to need some help. We easily defeat Zinzolin, and I continue on to the village bridge, where an old man claims he's on a 999 win streak and that I would be his 1000th win in a row. Does no one in Unova have fire types? Maybe I should look into a fire type run in the future. I make it to Opelousas City and get ready to face Drayden. Honestly, his team might be more difficult to deal with than Clay's. I planned for quite a while, but I think I have a strategy that will work. It starts with being as annoying as possible. A Thunder Wave and a Confuse Ray from Circuit to try to avoid taking as many hits as we can. Her defense is pretty solid, so she takes hits well, and recovery from leftovers keeps her healthy so she can spam growls. He finally connects with a Dragon Tail and brings in Voltage, but I quickly swap back into Circuit, who continues to be a menace. I'm finally set up and ready to switch into Voltage on my own terms, but immediately get yeeted by a Dragon Tail and it sends in Dynamo. Volt Switch alleviates the issue while doing some chip damage, and thanks to the move tutor and Lentimos, Voltage is able to set up a Magnet Rise. See, Druddigon is not the issue here. It's the earth-powering Flygon that would be coming in next. Because Druddigon knows revenge, I wanted to avoid having Voltage take as much damage as possible just in case it broke through and hit them. Flygon comes in, but it can't do anything thanks to the Magnet Rise, which allows Voltage to take the one-shot with a Steel Gem boosted Flash Cannon. His Haxorus comes in, and instead of setting up Dragon Dances, goes for a Dragon Tail, which brings in Circuit. Big mistake, buddy. He now starts to Dragon Dance, but gets himself paralyzed. Nice speed buffs, idiot. We trade a few Growls and Dragon Dances until a hard Dragon Tail brings in Capacitor. She took this personally. A normal gem boosted Stomp gets a crit and takes out Haxorus and earns us the 7th badge. Was I overly cautious there? Probably. Is everyone still alive? Yes. Absolutely worth it. Please don't focus on the fact that Circuit would have died to a critical hit from Dragon Tail. Definitely don't focus on that. Hey, look over there! A flying ship! Wait. A flying ship? What the? Hey Drayden, maybe don't use your Dragon-type Pokemon to combat the ice. I've seen enough. This old man has truly lost his mind. Let's get him into the US Senate immediately. For now, there isn't much that I can do about the ice, so I leave town and carry on like nothing is wrong. I make it to Humalau City where the 8th and final gym leader Marlon awaits. Much like the last time we had a difficult gym battle, the subsequent battle is the polar opposite. A water-type specialist who doesn't have a water-ground-type Pokemon? He is not ready for what's about to hit him. His Caracosta likes to Shell Smash, but paralysis from discharge means he never actually gets the chance to attack. Wailord actually survives the discharge, but that's a good thing, as it allows Dynamo to Volt Switch into Voltage, whose Electric Gem boosted discharge takes out his ace in one shot. In the Seaside Cave, I encounter a Tynamo that I definitely realized was a viable encounter here and absolutely did not run into on accident. Adding to my stupidity, I also gave them the same nickname as Galvantula, and I obviously recognized this mistake at some point and changed it. There's no way I wouldn't notice. Only an idiot would miss something like that. Well, there's no rules against Pokemon having the same nickname, so they're both just going to have to deal with it. Hugh and I find Team Plasma, and after defeating everyone on the ship, it takes off again and I chase it into the giant chasm. I finally locate the source of the ice, Kyurem, and Zinzolin appears one last time to humiliate himself in battle. Seriously man, just give up. Compared to Zinzolin, Colress is a significant step up in competition. Circuit is able to take down his Magneton while getting him to burn through his potion, then a held Cherry Berry heals her paralysis and she takes out Magnezone as well. His Klinklang has a held air balloon and starts setting up with shift gear, but it's completely walled by voltage. Colress lets his greed get the best of him and his Klinklang pays the price. A bug gem boosted Signal Beam still isn't enough to get the KO onto Behemoth, but just the sight of a 3-eyed floating magnet monster is enough to get him to hurt itself in confusion and finish the job for us. A Volt Switch into Inductor number 2 lets him... Yes, Inductor number 2. Because you got here second. Okay, don't argue with me. Listen, you're really embarrassing me right now. Can we just talk about this later? Anyways, we've defeated Colress. Let's move on. I arrive in the command center to find Ghetsis. The coward runs off, but the Shadow Triad has no chance against us. I leave Hugh in the room with a hostile, angry jungle cat to go find Ghetsis. I'm sure he'll be fine. I'm more worried about me because Ghetsis is clearly a psycho. N shows up and saves my life, and now I've got to take out this Kyurem abomination Ghetsis created. I also have to consider who's best to lead off against this Kofagrigus, and as it turns out, Voltage is the one for the job in both scenarios. Kofagrigus manages to hang on with a sliver thanks to its leftovers, but at least it caused him to burn through a full restore. Between that and Protect, it takes a whole 6 discharges to take him out. Seismitoad comes in and threatens with an Earthquake, but Relay comes in clutch on the pivot. Normally locking a Pokemon into Earthquake with Encore against a Mono-type Electric team seems like an insane strategy, but thanks to Inductor 2's Levitate ability, this lets him safely come in and take the KO with a Giga Drain. Ideally, I can do the same thing to his Drapion, so I swap into Voltage in hopes of baiting out another Earthquake. Instead of an Earthquake, this idiot goes for a Night Slash. Well, that's a problem. I definitely don't want to Encore it into spamming Night Slashes, so I Volt Switch into Voltage to see if we can try this one more time. This time I send in Inductor 2 just in case, and of course he goes for another Night Slash. Thankfully he doesn't crit on any of his 3 Night Slashes. Even with the Drain Punch heal, Inductor is too weak to deal with Hydreigon. In fact, everyone is except for Voltage thanks to its Life Orb. Yeah, I'd say guaranteeing a Magnemite encounter has been well worth missing out on having a chance to use Electivire. I send in Circuit on a Flamethrower and sadly she gets burned. She retaliates with a Toxic because there is no way she's going to suffer alone. I use Voltage as a pivot once again, then Volt Switch into Dynamo, who thankfully doesn't get burned. The toxic damage is taking its toll, and a Bug Gem boosted Signal Beam and one more tick take down his Electric Eel. Last is his Toxicroak. I Volt Switch into Inductor 1 on a Poison Jab, then again into Voltage, who's immune to the next one. I Hard Switch into Relay on the Brick Break and he tanks it like a champ. The problem is Toxicroak knows Sucker Punch. Everyone else on the team is too weak to swap in. The only option is to go for Acrobatics and hope he goes for any other move. Sadly, he doesn't. With his last breath, Relay's static ability paralyzes the Toad, sacrificing his life so that Voltage can safely outspeed and finish the battle. He died so we could live. We will carry on his legacy. At the top of Victory Road, we have one final showdown with Hugh. Dynamo handles his Unpheasant, but this time he has an Afro Buffalo with Earthquake that we have to deal with. Unlike Ghetsis, Hugh understands that Ground is 4 times super effective against Voltage. Inductor 2 avoids a crit, then Dynamo and Circuit work together to take out Simisear. Voltage does get crit by a Leaf Blade, but they take down his Snake with a few Signal Beams. Hugh apologizes for all the trouble he caused us by picking fights with everyone he runs into and more than makes up for it with the Thunderbolt TM. We're going to need it in order to deal with the Elite Four. We have some pretty solid coverage moves, although not having Relay certainly hurts. And seriously, how did I not notice this? What is wrong with me? What I really like about the Gen 5 Elite Four is that you can choose to battle them in any order. I choose to start with Shauntal and her Ghost types. Dynamo only needs one workup to help him sweep through her entire team with Shadow Balls. I figured it'd be best to get the easiest ones out of the way first. Unintentionally going in order, I choose to fight Grimsley next. OG Inductor takes out Liepard, then gets some chip damage onto Scrafty and Voltage comes in. Even a crit from Brick Break wouldn't take them out, and thanks to Volt Switch, Inductor is able to come in at the same time as Crocodile instead of switching in on an Earthquake and getting obliterated. Volt Switch is really good. Voltage finishes off the Bisharp with a Thunderbolt, and that's 2 down and 2 to go. Up third is Caitlyn and her Psychic types. I need to set up workups against her Musharna, but it's going to spam Yawns. If it fails to put us to sleep, the only damaging move it has is Charge Beam, which both Dynamo and Capacitor are immune to. Eventually, she gets stalled out of Yawns and is free to set up workups and sweep through her entire team with Shadow Balls, just like Shauntal's. Last up is Marshal and his fighting types. I lead with Inductor 1 to bait out a Rock Tomb because even with a speed drop, Dynamo is going to be faster and can Volt Switch to safety while taking down his throw. Inductor 1 comes back in and he has the same job as before. Bait out a Stone Edge and Volt Switch. An Electric Gem boosted Volt Switch from Voltage gets the KO on his Conkeldurr and brings my Steel type back to safety. Seriously, Volt Switch is incredible. Someone get Marshal a Fell for It Again award because for the 3rd time Inductor 1 baits out a Rock type move, this time for Circuit. She does have to avoid a crit, but she does, and a Thunderbolt takes out Sock. Unfortunately, I didn't have a Volt Switch on Circuit, so I have to hard switch into Capacitor. Who can tank a high jump kick? No problem. Not even close. Nice try, Marshal. He goes for a random move because Capacitor is so low and goes for a bounce of all things. Voltage tanks it but gets paralyzed, so I switch into Inductor 1 who resists high jump kick and finishes off Mienshao with a Thunderbolt. Not the cleanest plan for Mienshao, but we escape with our lives and we're ready to take on the champion. Iris has a very difficult team to deal with, and while I've got a plan, it's not as reliable as the ones that I had for the rest of the Elite Four. Inductor 2 can take down her lead Hydreigon with 2 Drain Punches, healing himself up a bit in the process. That healing is the only reason he's able to survive a double edge from Aggron, especially with his minus defense nature. Even with an Expert Belt, a 4 times super effective Drain Punch isn't enough. But Iris burning a full restore here helps Inductor get back to near full health. Because of the recovery, he's able to survive an X-Scissor with just 17 HP. Then a Dragon Tail yeets her ace out of here because I am not prepared to deal with it just yet. Obviously, I don't know exactly what's going to come in next, but it ends up being Lapras. It ultimately doesn't matter who it was, because this is sadly the end of the road for Inductor 2. I need a clean switch, and with his health this low, he's not going to be able to do anything. Thank you for your service, buddy. You will be missed. Dynamo comes in and gets swift revenge on the Lapras, then she sends in her Haxorus again. A Volt Switch gets Dynamo to safety, and Inductor avoids a crit from an Earthquake. Thanks to the Dragon Tail and Volt Switch damage, Inductor can get the KO with an Electric Gem boosted Thunderbolt. A Volt Switch means Circuit can tank the Flamethrower and set up a Toxic. I don't really have a way to go punch for punch against Druddigon, so I figured this was my best option. Because of the poison damage, Druddigon will certainly die this turn, but only if Circuit stays in with her 16 HP and lands one final Thunderbolt. She's been with me since the beginning. My emotional support sheet. Or, I don't actually know what you are at this point. Like some sort of electric giraffe penguin hybrid? Why do you have flippers? Anyways, no matter how confusing she may be on the outside, what's on the inside was the heart of a champion. This leaves one last Pokemon, Archops. Voltage is the perfect counter to her Burgh. All it can muster is a weak Rock Slide before getting obliterated by a Thunderbolt. Our 3 fallen comrades are smiling down on us, knowing their sacrifices were all essential parts of what led us to victory. If you're still here, I just want to say thank you for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, consider giving it a like. If you want to see more content like this in the future, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's about time for me to head out. Thanks for watching, and I'll smell you later.